one of them. And they were telling me, back in the day that about Bigfoot, that, the squaws would be down at the river, doing their, laundry basically, or cleaning or whatever. And Bigfoot would come in and grab them, or come in even into the camp sometime and, grab a squaw or a child. And they claimed that they were taking them not so much for anything other than for food. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there is different species of them. Maybe if they're starving, they were looking for any type of food they can get.
Yeah, I don't think they're starving. I think they can chase it down. I think they were taking the women for maybe breeding, because I think they've been diluted down by crossbreeding, and somehow they can do that. The genomes seem to work, where they can interbreed with humans. And, some of them are more human-like than others. That's my theory anyway, and that's why tracks have such a variety of shapes to them. Our tracks look so much different than the ones that was taken at Bluff Creek even. And there's such a difference in them that I think they're either different species or the ones in the Patterson film, which is the Bluff Creek I was just talking about, had been diluted down by crossbreeding with natives. And that's the story, too. They take the women for breeding. My daughter, I've taken up there a lot over the years, and she saw them 3 times, and I think they've got something for her, so I watch her pretty close, and but they've never grabbed her. They have, she claims, something put their hand on her during the night when she was in a sleeping bag, and a lot of the weird things have happened to us up there. I'll get into it later. This is a paranormal show, right?
It's 100% paranormal. Did she ever physically see one? I mean, did it describe?
Yes, absolutely. Just not far from where we were eating our dinner there at the Sierra camp. And it was very, very clear, very, very bold, standing right up, looking at her. She said it looked like a huge black basketball player. That's what she thought. It just looked at it. It was naked. It was hairy. It was broad-shouldered, though. And when she said it turned, it didn't turn its neck. It turned its whole body. And she was so speechless. I was sitting. We both had our back to where this thing was, about 70 feet away. And she got up to grab a paper towel off the tree and wipe her plate out. And she turned around and seen this thing, and she just froze. She couldn't say anything. She just started waving her arm and her hand, and I didn't know what she was doing. So I said, "What is it? What is it?" And then she still couldn't talk. So I stood up, I looked around, and then she talked. It was a Bigfoot right there.
Oh, wow.
And my camera, of course, it's 15 feet hanging on a tree. That's what happens. Not that I would have got a picture of it, because I didn't see it. She said it just moved in behind the trees and was gone. But she thought it was obviously and purposely showing itself to her. And so anyway, she's a little leery about going into that camp anymore. And some of the other people are. Some of the other people are too. So anyway.
Now, did you? What I saw, the thing was about maybe, I would say 7-8 feet tall, maybe a little bit more. It's really hard. I'll be honest with you. I didn't. That's where people said, "Hey, you're lying, Gary." You know what? When you run in a situation like that and you're not prepared for it,
you're not taking notes.
Yeah, well, like people would say, "Well, you had cameras. You went there to take pictures. Why didn't you stop and get a picture?" You know what? It was the only one thing I had in my mind, was to get back to the car and get out of there. I was in the service. I served overseas. I had bad things happen back in the late 60s, and that scared me more than anything, If I was brave enough, maybe I should have turned around and tried to take a picture, but I wouldn't have peed my pants if I wasn't scared. I never did that when I was in the military.
You just, all this stuff can take you, and you think you'll do certain things, and sure, if you're calm and telling us what you had to smoke or something like that, you could stop and say, "Well, nothing's going to bother me," and stop taking this picture while this thing's running at you. But that's not going to happen. You don't think right. Now, I think if I'm up at the camp again, I would try to be more rational. I mean, I wouldn't panic, but I know in 2011 when I wrote this, my other book, Voices in the Wilderness, I had an encounter. And so these things are still around up there. And I was up there 2 years ago also with my wife. And And we went up, and that's when the paranormal stuff happens again. We just big lightsaber, like in Star Wars, comes floating by us. And you don't know what that's all about. You don't know what it's going to do. You don't know what it's for. You don't know what they're doing, but they're obviously looking you over, or something is. It's controlled. It's not like you're imagining this thing. It's there. And what do you do with that?
Well, see, there's a different thing. If you're out there trying to get sounds, or if you're out there looking for a Bigfoot, then you're prepared, if you run across one. But when you're out there and don't even think about it, the only thing I was worried about is they were having bear attacks in that area. And, that was the only thing I was actually scared about. But, when you see something like that, you're not prepared for it. You're not looking for it. I mean, that's the worst boogeyman you can run across.
Yeah, boogie, huh? Yeah,
I boogied.
They are big. They are huge, and they're massive. They're very, very strong. Very, very fast. You wouldn't think they'd be fast, as big as they are, but they're agile, and they're just amazing beings, whatever they are. I think probably we had good ones up there because we weren't carried away in our sleeping bag. We didn't get eaten. When we first started with us in '71, we all had guns. We still carry guns up there, and it doesn't seem to stop them because I think they know your intention. There's something that could read maybe the aura. I'm not sure, but they're not worried about getting shot. I don't guess. These things weren't. Cause we're inside the shelter. All this noise is going on. These things jabbering out there, and you don't know by the sound of it if they're going to come in at you and tear that shelter. Because they could literally tear that shelter apart. Excuse me, if they wanted to. And we're there with our guns, big guns, ready to shoot our way out if we had to, but we didn't. And they didn't come in after us, so it all continued. And it wasn't until 3 years later when I started actually encountering them outside the shelter, that's when I got these really cool recordings, my interaction with them. And that's one of those sounds is called the samurai cry, which we'll play later, I guess. But it was the night I saw one. That's right. In fact, that's the one I saw, the one that did the samurai cry. It was behind us. Bill and I, we were outside the shelter and by our stove that we'd packed in and reassembled. By the way, the only way you get big things in there is by a mule. You have to assemble it. And all that stuff, by the way, had just been taken out just a couple of years ago because BLM found out about it. And you can't keep things in forestry area like that. So the camp had to be tore apart and all that stuff had to be hauled out. The camp is still there. Still things happen, but you can't. What you take in, you got to take out, which is right. Because I tell you, it was set up for Armageddon. Ammunition, guns, and barrels, and everything else we had. Because it's such a remote place, no one ever runs across it. But somehow somebody got wind of the location of it and turned it in, or the BLM just happened to find it from one of the other members, which I suspicion, but can't say for sure.
Wow, how long was that camp in existence before you took it
the
down?
Johnson brothers? They started going up there in 1958, and they don't go. Of course, one of them they're passed away now, so obviously it's just their son who goes up there now hunting. It's still a hunting camp. So they try to get up there once a year to go hunting. A lot of bear up there. They hunt bear. They hunt deer. They're hunters, avid hunters, the grandchildren and the children themselves. So they don't get up there as often like we used to. We used to go up there all the time. I used to go up there every chance I got. I'd get up there. And it got me into horses. It got me into all kinds of fun stuff.
How far in did you have to go?
It's about 8 miles. Into the wilderness, and it's some areas are pretty treacherous. I've had some issues. We all have had at one time or another getting in there on horseback and packing mules and just going off the edge of a cliff or something like that. And I've had a few broken ribs, and I've been thrown off a horse a time or two. It went off the edge with me.
Oh wow!
And it's just it's an adventure.
Yeah. Boy, it's scary. Like my uncle was out hunting years and years ago. I was a little kid, and he ran across a bear, and he was actually bear hunting, and he shot it, several times. But I'll tell you, my uncle was mauled so bad he was in the hospital for well over a month or more, and he had major scars the rest of his life. So, I mean, you guys are brave. I mean, honestly, after what I saw, you couldn't pay me. You know, my wife, for all these years, we've had 8 kids. And ever since that happened, my wife would say, let's go camping. I go, no, I'm not going camping. You're going to, we bought a property with 2 acres of cedar trees. I said, that's enough. You're not going to get me out in the woods anywhere.
Well, I guess, what I tell people, the only thing you got to fear is, I think Winston Churchill said this, is fear itself. You got to not have fear around these things, because they will scare the crap out of you if you let it, or just realize who you are as a human being. I get into this pretty depth because I believe we are special. We're humans here who's given dominance on the earth, so that's why, or dominion, not dominance, dominion. And you can command these things, and they will leave. And that's exactly what has happened at our camp before. So it's a matter of controlling your fear, because they can definitely sense fear. If you've got a gun like we do, I usually, in my first 2 chambers of my handgun, I will carry birdshot, which really that will sting a bear. And the bear in California, they're shy away from you. They generally don't, they're not aggressive like the grizzly bear are. I've been up in Canada a few times when you want more than that. You want something that'll stop a bear. But you also, being an American citizen, you can't just take a gun into Canada. So you need a local guide that has a permission to have a gun. Because there's a lot of grizzly bears if you're going to go bigfooting and up in that area.
Well, you know what scared me after we saw what we saw? We got in the car and we drove maybe 15, 20 miles, and we came up to a little store. And the guy first noticed that we were really shook up, and we said we were out taking pictures. And he said, first thing out of his mouth was, you have to watch out for the bears, because they have actually mauled and half-eaten people around, in the woods in that area. And he asked, well, did you have any protection? And I said, well, we had a can of bear spray. And he laughed at us and said, that isn't going to do any good. And then he even mentioned that they had reports of Bigfoot in that area. So,
oh, wow. Yeah. He said that without you saying anything.
Yeah. And we came in there, and we were rattling on. I don't remember. It's been years ago, but I know that I was the most shook up in my whole life, that experience.
I would do it. Yeah. I'll tell you, up at camp, one of the ways I got into camp was the Johnson brothers went back up with recorders after this initial issue they had with these things. And one of the guys, they all went back up. I say it's all 4 or 5 guys went back up. There's only 6 of us in the group, counting me. And I didn't go, but one of the guys got scared off so bad he wouldn't go back. It just frightened him. He's a very religious man. He didn't know how to put this into perspective with his religious beliefs, because these things, whatever they are, bigger, stronger, faster, everything about them is very unknowing. So he wouldn't go back by himself. He'd come out and ask if I'd go with him, and that's what got me into it, because once I heard the story about what went on, I had to get involved. It was just too incredible. And that's how I got involved, actually, just because he wouldn't go back by himself. And to this day, he won't spend the night up there if he goes back, which he doesn't. He's too old now, but it's just an amazing area too. It's so pristine and so beautiful, and you're up there where the rivers start. You're where the springs are. You're up in 10,000 feet. Our camp is 8,400 feet.
Oh, was. Now I'm gonna interrupt you just for like 15 seconds. Hey guys, I'm going to turn off the Facebook Live. You can catch us on www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. That's www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. You can find us on Speaker Radio. Just type in Night Dreams Talk Radio, and we're going to get back to Ron right now. Okay, Ron, I'm back with you.
Hi, I'm back too.
Okay, we're both back.
That's a good sign. Are you there?
Oh, yeah, I just had to exit out of Facebook Live. So, yeah, I am here most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we can get back in the conversation. I apologize for that.
Oh, go ahead.